Excellent. Well, good morning, everybody. Good to see so many on the line, and well done, Molly and the team, for organising the event this morning. My name is Mike Whiting. I'm the Cabinet Member for Economic Development at Kent County Council, a post I've held since October last year. Just a little bit about me. The role of is a strange role at KCC. Because it's one of those roles where you have some levers, but not many, but hopefully can act in a way of influencing and pulling people together to make good things happen for the county. And what I want to try to do this morning, if I may, is just run through some of those things. Clearly, there's an economic challenge that we all face because of COVID, and I'd like to just run through that and our response so far with our various partners, and how we're hopefully further supporting the sector moving on. It's critical, I think, to our renewal post-COVID. And I use the word renewal advisedly. I don't think we're in the future going to see us going back to how things were. We're going to see kind of a new way of doing things, and a new kind of post-COVID world. So you'll hear me talk a lot this morning about renewal and resilience, as opposed to simple recovery, because recovery suggests we go back to where we were. And I don't think, from the runes that I've read, I don't think that's the direction of travel. Excuse me. Construction, a few stats on there. But the important one for me, I remember Mark mentioned earlier, Quinn mentioned earlier, that actually every pound invested generates £7 in the wider economy. So I don't know, there's somewhere between £2 and £7, but there is absolutely no doubt that the construction industry is a major driver to the economy of the country, and the figures are there. The interesting thing for me is that so many of the homes, for example, and so much of the output is delivered by smaller companies, smaller medium-sized companies employing less than 100 people. I think that's really where some of the resilience of the construction industry sits. In Kent and Medway, we have roughly 45,000 jobs in construction, which is 6.5% of the overall number of jobs in the area, which is a higher concentration than we see in the southeast, and considerably higher concentration than we might expect nationally. And we've also seen a number of apprenticeships, and I think this is a number that we would be looking to see grow. We've had roughly 500 a year for the last 3 years, which bringing new people on board is going to be really important as we move out of the post-COVID world, where the employment opportunities for many young people in particular leaving maybe is different to what they were this time last year even. This graph, some of you may have seen this graph before. I always find it a fascinating one, and it kind of shows the sectoral impact of COVID during since lockdown. And you can see on the left-hand side where we've got a change in GVA, and most sectors, as you can see, sit in that red period, that red area, where they're seeing a drop in the GVA generally. Public administration, you might expect, which you'll see top centre, is roughly where it was, mainly because those public sector organisations continue to have to provide the services that they've always provided. Construction is the second largest sector in Kent in terms of GVA, and we've got a greater concentration, as we saw from the previous slide, of construction as a sector than other parts of the UK. But it was one of the top 3 hardest hit. You'll see tourism and hospitality towards the centre, towards the bottom, and retail and wholesale we know as well. But certainly construction has been very hard hit by the pandemic. This graph speaks for itself. There's this unemployment challenge we see moving forward. we've had 116% increase since lockdown. And that increase actually is pretty much across the board. The 16s to 24s are in that sort of ballpark, as are those between 25 and 45. There's a slightly lesser number when we get above 45 to 65, but it's a massive increase, as you can see, a very sharp. You'll notice on to the left of the chart, 2008, 2009, the Great Recession, when the banks collapsed and everything was going very badly for us. We are dwarfing that now in the unemployment figures we're seeing here in Kent, and that I fear is set to rise further. And it's across all areas of Kent. You'll see in the centre the red and the orange bars, Kent and Medway and Great Britain as a whole. But you'll see that this unemployment increase is affecting everybody pretty much similarly. Although if you look to the bottom, while the numbers may be smaller, if you look at Sevenoaks and Tunbridge and Malling and Tunbridge, you'll see down there actually the proportionate, the percentage increase in those areas is actually higher, and this is increases in unemployment, is actually higher. The dark figure is pre-lockdown. The dark bar and the lighter blue is the August figures, the latest figures we have for the end of August. But actually there's a disproportionate effect in some of those western areas of the county, but nonetheless not a good picture in employment terms anywhere here in Kent and Medway. The immediate response, of course, to all of that, and I will have to turn this off, apologies. Ah, right, sorry, have we lost that? Right, apologies, I think we're there again. Can you see?
Yeah, we can all see. No
you
worries.
Can see it. Apologies. Yeah, I don't know what happened there.
No,
the immediate response to the COVID reaction, of course, was we can see there nearly 250,000 people furloughed in the area. 80,000. It was late in coming, some of the help, but over 80,000 self-employed people in Kent were able to access help, and £373 million in business support. In fact, actually, the government COVID support here in Kent and Medway was just shy, when you take into account the various loans that have been offered through or secured through the various loan schemes as well, was just shy of £1 billion supporting businesses here in Kent and Medway. And weeded out a little bit at the bottom here, with 10,000 businesses were signing up and help and getting the support they needed to understand the myriad. We all knew it was a complicated picture, a whole maze of support coming out of government, and the Kent and Medway COVID support line, ably run, I must say, by Jo James and her colleagues down at the Kent Invicta Chamber of Commerce, was able to help roughly to date about 10,000 people. The longer term, and when we say longer term, we're talking now in months rather than years, but over the next 18 months, Kent County Council, working with partners at Medway Council and our district colleagues, and also with the Kent and Medway Enterprise Partnership, KMEP, which is a business-based, business-focused subset, if you like, of CELEP with the South East Local Enterprise Partnership. We have worked on this resilience and renewal plan over the last few months, and it was launched recently, as how we can move things forward. And effectively what we're saying is business needs supporting, people need supporting, and we need investment so that we can get the economy back up and running, and make it more resilient in the future, and to grow in those new ways I mentioned earlier. You'll see greener futures on the slide. And better opportunities and fairer chances is a really important driver through the whole of the plan, to ensure that the people of Kent and Medway, whatever happens, have the best opportunities available to move forward. What we've been doing now, as we mentioned earlier, the COVID helpline, again, that's, as I say, that's helped so far about 10,000 people. KCC has put another £100,000 into that project, to extend that help. The phone number's there, and there's also online help. I was going to put up chat line, but that may have had the wrong connotation. But there is online chat help available at the web address that you can see, the askphil.biz web address there. And many businesses are going to the helpline, and every time government announces a new piece of legislation to help business, a new piece of funding to help business, we see a spike in the traffic to both the hotline via the phone and the web chat. So I would encourage you, if you've got questions about any of the help that may be available to you as a business, to get online or to get on the phone and talk to our colleagues down at the Kent Invicta Chamber of Commerce. Another thing we have done in the last couple of months is put a further £6 million of loan support. This is really we found that many firms were falling through some of the loan schemes that government was operating. We have a Kent and Medway Business Fund, which has been going for some time now. I think has probably loaned out many tens of millions of pounds in the past. We found a further £6 million to put in the pot for that, and it provides interest-free loans for up to 6 years. It is very heavily subscribed. I think the day after we announced this a few weeks ago, we became very heavily oversubscribed. We're working through those applications, but not all of those applications, of course, will be successful, unfortunately. But so again, if you've an interest in that, there is a line there at the bottom by which you can apply for those loans. Really importantly, moving forward, and I think this is where the construction industry will be most helpful in the renewal of the Kent and Medway economy, is in employment. We know there are projects coming down the line. The Lower Thames Crossing, for example, are already working with universities and education providers and training providers to ensure that the thousands, the tens of thousands of people they're going to need for that construction task of creating what I understand to be the largest borehole in the world, is going to create enormous opportunities for jobs for people here in Kent and for the construction industry more widely. But we need to ensure those people are trained up so that when that pipeline opens, people are there. People on the call may have heard more recently about the plans for the theme park just north of Ebbsfleet. That's gaining new momentum. Again, they are looking to, they will be looking to employ, again, tens of thousands of people directly, and of course all those indirect construction jobs that will go with creating a park over the next few years. So we do need to ensure that we have the people in place so that you as the construction industry have a pool of talent here in Kent to draw on and not have to import that talent from other parts of the country or further afield. So we're working very hard. In fact, the leader of the council, Roger Goff, the leader of KCC, is currently chairing the first meeting of the employment task force this morning, and I'm going to join that after I come off the call here. But this is going to be really important. Government are involved in this. We're going to be working with the Kickstart programme, and we want to ensure that where possible, Kent can supply its own requirement, particularly, as I say, in the construction industry that we see and we envisage being very strong in the months and years ahead. This is a very focused piece of work, the task force. We're looking for that to last probably a maximum of 12 months to really give that impetus we need to get those measures and those programs in place so that employers and KMEF are involved in this, employers are involved in this. So please, if you have any questions, you have any opportunities, or you have suggestions as to how KCC and the task force more widely may be able to support the construction industry, please do get in touch. As I say, the construction industry for us is a major priority, and what we're trying to do, and I've run through some of this already, invest in jobs, innovate as well with some I'll come on to some of those things later. But one of the main things we do is make the case for people to invest here in Kent. And with that investment comes the opportunities for building and developing. We work in partnership with a whole range of people. Some of you may be aware of some of these groups, but certainly working with the planning officers group, which is a group of planning officers from local authorities. Kent itself has a very limited role in local plans, but we work closely with our colleagues and the districts and the boroughs to ensure actually this wider system of infrastructure that we all need is in place. And of course, we are in regular contact, as I've mentioned earlier, at all levels with central government and ministers. KCC is really banging the drum now for infrastructure first. We recognise that to ensure, and I think a previous speaker may have talked about this, getting the roads, getting the schools, even getting the hospitals in place before you start to build the houses is a really important thing for Kent County Council now. And this is the drum that we are banging enormously, vigorously, sorry, with government, central government. But it's not just the infrastructure of the roads, the hospitals and the schools. It's also the infrastructure for employment, to try to ensure that we can create the employment space we need here in Kent to reduce the commuter miles, if you like, and actually make Kent a slightly greener place. So we're developing this infrastructure framework. We've had it for some time. We call it the GIF, the Growth and Infrastructure Framework, and we're digitizing it to make it easier for people to access. But in the last few years, I've seen this figure, this infrastructure gap rise, and you'll see on the screen £4 billion infrastructure gap now. So this is our ask of government. We've got to fill that gap to ensure that the development that sits currently within the local plans of our district and borough partners can be delivered in such a way that it's sustainable. And we're working with government to develop an infrastructure first deal, which we've seen elsewhere in the country. Oxford was an example of that, and you'll see it in that corridor between Oxford and Cambridge, where the roads and the infrastructure is going in advance of all the other development. But certainly, as part of the infrastructure, we see employment land and employment development as a key part of that. So we continue to make the case for investment. To date, we've secured over £140 million of government money through CELEP, the South East Local Enterprise Partnership. When the government announced its Get Britain Building scheme quite recently, and it was calling for shovel-ready projects, we were able to put forward successfully 7 projects in Kent, another £36 million worth of investment, and we're looking for that money to come through next month. And we're supporting Locating Kent, which I believe is a great organisation which is driving inward investment. And you'll see an artist's impression there as I sang it, Parkway Station itself, a £35 million project. These are the 7, I referred to the 7 successful projects under that Get Britain Building programme, and they're spread far and wide. But again, they are all construction projects effectively. These are all things that we will need to build, and now we have the money coming through to do that. They're not county council projects by any means. Many, for example, the business hub in Swanley onto the right, left of the screen there, is being managed by Sevenoaks District Council, and the employment and business hub down in Romney Marsh by Folkestone Hythe District Council. So but they're important pieces of infrastructure that will create jobs, and of course for the construction industry, those indirect jobs as the projects get built out. That inward investment I talked about is super important, and Kent is seeing itself as a bit of there's some numbers here. We've seen prime industrial rent rise by 14% over the year, to the numbers that are on the screen, almost a third up over the last 3 years. And we've also got 2 of the Southeast's largest building projects are planned in Kent, including the photograph there the artist's description, if you like, of the Panettone site in Aylesford, with over 600,000 square feet of industrial and commercial land available. And I talked about locating Kent. We're heavily supportive of locating Kent, and one of its main sponsors at KCC. But they have. I was speaking to Gavin, their chief exec, the other day. They've seen their pipeline increase from 200 to 400 since lockdown, as more and more companies want to see an investment here in Kent, and perhaps moving out of the big cities to be here. We're also innovating to accelerate the quality of development within the housing market. We've had an affordable housing select committee at KCC, which made a number of recommendations. I'll come on to those shortly. The Kent Design Guide, again, is being refreshed at the moment, and is also being digitized to make it easier to access. And KCC's No Use Empty scheme, which, if you're not aware, I'll go on to that later, but it's been a hugely successful scheme of pumping money in advance in the way that I'm suggesting the government need to now, put the money for the infrastructure up front and then get that back and then recycle those loans further down the line. What we're planning to do in response actually to the Affordable Housing Select Committee, we're looking to set up, and we will be setting up, a new housing growth unit. There's a very successful one in Essex that works with developers. It works with the district and borough colleagues there, but the county council in Essex has set up a very successful housing growth unit, which is delivering more housing, and including in that more affordable housing, which we know is much needed here in the southeast. The Kent Design Guide I mentioned, that's being refreshed as we speak, and hopefully many in the construction industry have had the opportunity to feed into that. But there'll be more about that later when that goes live in the next few months. That refresh goes live in the next few months. And the No Use Empty, this is just a recyclable loan fund. Some of you may be aware, but it actually has been delivering 600 new homes a year, which is more than some district or borough council local plans are delivering at the moment. It's an extraordinarily successful scheme, producing for up until now with zero interest loans to businesses, mostly small and medium-sized enterprises. Part of that 60% we talked about early on in the presentation, those small businesses. And I was out on a couple of projects in Dover yesterday, and I was talking to some of the developers that are using this. And this fund has really been a lifesaver for them during the pandemic, and kept many of them afloat with cheap and easily accessible funding, where they found their normal routes of funding through their banks has perhaps become more difficult. And last month, I was able to secure an extra £12 million from KCC's treasury coffers to invest in what I believe is an extraordinary scheme. And if you don't mind, I'll show you a few examples of this. An old school building in Folkestone being renovated into 8 flats, again with money that's come over a period of up to 3 years, interest-free loan to support the developer in creating those new homes. There's work in Ramsgate, there's some interior shots of what was an old working man's club, again converted into new properties. This is not a house, a block of flats anymore, or it was derelict, but what we see here is a good renovation into a single home, brought back into the housing market, and sold on. And here in Herne Bay, a disused pub burnt out some years ago, completely turned. And what we've done here, this is a new part of the scheme, is to allow actually the demolition of a site, not just the refurb of old buildings. Sorry? Just not the refurb of old buildings, but the complete renovation of a site. And as I said, we put an extra £12 million in. These are interest-bearing loans, but they're extraordinarily good rate of interest. I think it's between 5 and 6% over a 3-year period. This is one of the sites I visited yesterday in Dover. The houses actually now are pretty much being sold. I think they've got one. They're now finished. This is a picture taken a couple of months ago, but they're now finished, and people are now living in these new homes in the village just outside of Dover. But the developer was telling me without that money from KCC and the ease with which he can draw that money down within days rather than waiting for weeks, has helped his business through the crisis, and is now delivering new homes for the people of Dover. So in summary, if I may, Molly, KCC, we've thrown 200,000, that should say, I'm missing a zero, of investment into that COVID helpline, which we know has helped an enormous number of businesses in Kent, and the intelligence that we get back from those calls that we get in is being fed weekly directly up to the Secretary of State, helping hopefully to provide better help in the future. £6 million investment in the loan fund, the new housing growth unit coming forward, the infrastructure proposition for government to get that infrastructure first, and that growth and infrastructure map of Kent and Medway, identifying where the gaps are and hopefully finding ways to fill those. The no use empty, the additional 12 million on top of the 105 million that is already generated and used over the years, and securing sums of money from government via CELEP, with creating construction projects here in the county, but more importantly, creating new jobs and new opportunities for the people of Kent. That is me, Molly. My final question to everybody around the table is, how else can we help you? And if you've got ideas about how KCC, working with its partners, can help, then please do get in touch. Thank you very much for your time.
That's brilliant, a really informative session, so thank you. There was lots to say there, and if I can as well, just a massive thank you for all the help that you're doing to all the local businesses. I know we've helped quite a bit with some of the helpline, as you said, and I know it's absolutely invaluable, the help that businesses are getting at the moment, and you've got a huge part to play in that, so thank you. Just one question in the chat here. Will KCC be developing trade-specific frameworks?
We have to look at that. If you've got an idea about how that, I'm just looking at where it's come from. Oh, from Carly. Sorry, Carly. Yes, we can. I'm sure we can. If perhaps, Carly, if I drop my email address in the chat, do you want to give me your thoughts about that? But it is very important. We do try to, through the training work that we do with other organisations, particularly KMEP, and through CELEP as well, support the various guilds, which are skills specific. But let's have a look at how we can make that work better for Carly, perhaps. Carly, if I drop that into the chat, I'll do it now. There we go. I hope that helps, Carly. Please get in touch with me, Carly, and we'll see and we'll have a chat and see what it is exactly that you're thinking of there, unless she wants to come online and talk about it now. Carly?
Looks like she'll be okay with the email address.
Okay, fine.
Right, thank you, Mike. Yes, I did just get your message on there. It was just a thought, really, and just wondering if you'd considered doing so. It just seems that any projects that are upcoming in Kent, you're going to need the right contractors to deliver it, especially if you're trying not to go out of the county. It just may be an efficient way to kind of vet those that would be suitable for certain projects. But happy to drop you my email, and I'll also put my number on there as well, and happy to speak separately at a later.
Drop me a line. We'll take it offline, Carly. Thank you very much.
Lovely. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mike.
No, you're welcome. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody, and thanks again, Molly, for organising such a great event. I hope it's been helpful.
You're very welcome. Thank you.